was growing up, and I was trying to be healthy, one of the things I used to do was chug milk.
Yeah.
Because I got told that it would make me tall like my brothers. So I used to drink milk like crazy.
Yeah.
Straight from the carton. Just as many gulps as I could take from the fridge.
Did it work? Did you grow?
I have no idea. I'm still shorter than they are, so I guess not. But that's one of the big myths that I think a lot of families still believe, that milk is great for our bones and to help us grow. What's your thoughts on milk?
Yeah, so
it's a controversial topic as well.
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, the dairy industry is big. Our current Secretary of Agriculture worked for the dairy industry. It's problematic because the science isn't there. There was a paper called Milk and Health that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, top medical journal in the world, arguably, maybe the Lancet if you're from the UK. Mm-hmm. But it basically was written by two Harvard scientists that dissected all of the scientific evidence around milk and whether the claims were right or not. And just maybe for the audience in Europe, you might not know this, but in the States, you'll remember this. There were all these got milk ads. So there were famous people, celebrities, sports athletes, politicians, all wearing a white milk mustache. Mm-hmm. And they're like, got milk as a promotion. And in those ads, it would say, it's going to build better bones, it's going to do this, it's going to do that. And the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, actually, or I think it was the Federal, say you can't do that because it's not true. Like, you have to take those ads out. So those ads went away. And it was the government promoting those ads with the Dairy Council. So there's something called checkout programs that the government has where it's supposed to support agriculture. Well, the government was paying in part for these ads with taxpayer dollars, and the science wasn't there. And the Dietary Guidelines for Americans says that the average American should have 3 glasses of milk a day, and kids should have 2 glasses of milk a day to be healthy. You cannot get money and funding for school lunches in America without having milk on the menu. Now, there is no evidence to support this. In fact, there's opposite evidence that skim milk causes weight gain because it doesn't satisfy your appetite, that milk can cause cancer, that prostate cancer, that it doesn't create strong bones. In fact, there's higher risk of fracture with high milk drinkers, that it creates a lot of digestive issues for people. It can create autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes. It has common allergies or food sensitivities that people get. And I remember I was in the emergency room once, and when I was working in the ER, and this mother comes in with this kid with had this 10th ear infection a few weeks. I was like, what happened? Like, when did this start? Oh, it started when he was like 12 months old. I said, what changed? Well, I stopped breastfeeding, and I started giving him milk, and all of a sudden he started getting these ear infections. I'm like, oh, this is before I even knew about all this. It was just kind of an interesting footnote. But we really have to look at the data and be science-driven. And the problem is we have corporate capture in America, where the food industry has captured our food agencies, our political system, from the FDA to the USDA. They spend, for example, $500 million just on the Farm Bill, which has, for example, food stamps and other food programs, child infant nutrition. So it's really unfortunate, but milk is not nature's perfect food. It's only nature's perfect food if you're a calf.
Is there health benefits to milk?
Yes. So that's the other side of it. Now, what milk should we be drinking, right? If we're drinking modern milk is from Holstein cows that are almost homogenous in the same, not homogenized milk, but homogenous breed. They have very few bulls inseminating them. They have massive insemination program from very few bulls that have a limited genetic stock. And they're what we call A1 cows. So most heirloom cows, most sort of historical dairy had something called A2 casein, which is less inflammatory, less likely to cause gut issues, less problematic for the body. So sheep and goat milk have A2. Certain cows like Jersey or Guernsey cows have A2 in them. And you can get A2 milk, you can A2 ice cream now. And so this A1 casein is potentially very problematic. So I think the current dairy is not great. And then we pasteurize it and homogenize it, and then we add growth hormone to the cows. That goes in there. We have estrogen that we add into the cows. It's in the milk. We have 60 different hormones in the milk, some of them naturally occurring. But we milk pregnant cows, and that milk has a lot more hormonal effects. So I think current dairy is not something we should consume. Now, if you have a chance to get sheep milk or goat milk or A2 milk from a cow, that may be okay. Yogurts may be okay. And it depends on your genetics too. 75% of the world's lactose intolerant. Many people have dairy sensitivities. But I think, if it's from the right source, it's okay. For example, I use goat whey as my morning protein shake. So goat whey is from goats, obviously. There's very little casein in it, but it's A2 casein if there's any, and I don't react to it. But if I have regular whey, I do have a reaction. I get congested, I'll get pimples, or I get regular stuff. So I don't think dairy is something we should be consuming in large amounts unless it's certain kinds of dairy.
What's your position on fruit?
I love fruit.
How much fruit?
I think it depends, right? So if you're a diabetic and you're metabolically completely out of whack and you don't have any metabolic resilience, eating a plum might be a problem for you. And now we have continuous glucose monitors. You can track your blood sugar and see. And I've had patients like this. Gee, I eat a plum and my sugar goes through the roof. So, but if I ate an apple, it doesn't. So I think different fruits have different effects on you. But for the most part, fruit is full of phytochemicals, fiber, phytonutrients. It does have a little bit of sugar in it. I would say no fruit juice. I think fruit juice is definitely linked to obesity in kids and other things. But if you want to have an apple or a peach or a plum, it's fine. I think you shouldn't have it first thing in the morning. I think protein and fat in the morning is important because it activates your metabolism and your protein synthesis. If you eat sugar in the morning, which is essentially what we eat in the world today, cereal, pancakes, waffles, muffins, bagels, sweetened yogurts, sweetened coffees. I mean, it's the worst possible thing we can do for our biology. It jacks up our blood sugar and insulin and ends up causing us to gain weight and be hungry and be craving more stuff. So having fruit, for example, you have frozen berries in your. So I had frozen cherries, for example, in my whey protein. That's okay because there's protein in there and it mitigates the effect. So,
what about eating times?
When to eat?
Yeah. Have you got any thoughts around when we should and shouldn't be eating?
Yeah, for sure. I think we had something called breakfast before, which was breaking the fast. And now people eat all night. They eat till they go to bed, and as soon as they wake up, they eat or have something sugary stuff in the morning, like a sugary coffee, and they don't give themselves a window of fasting, which is critical for our biology. And I wrote about this in my book, Young Forever, where we talked about how do we have our own repair, renewal system kick in. Because the body, think about it, Stephen, your body, when you cut yourself, heals. The skin closes, it heals. How does it know how to do that? Right? It's so smart. It's got your bones break. It heals, right? I broke my arm a few years ago. It just healed, right? What's going on? I'm not going, would you please heal in there? It knows what to do. It recruits stem cells. It recruits repair factors and growth factors, and it knows what to do. So the body has this innate healing, repair, renewal, and regeneration system, and we need to learn how to activate it. And most of us do the opposite. We do everything in our power to deactivate it, and that causes disease. So food is the most important thing we do to interact with these regenerative renewal repair systems. It's one of the things we call the hallmarks of aging. And there's one called deregulated nutrient sensing. And it really relates to how our bodies relate to food, how our nutrient sensing systems are dysregulated by our highly processed diet, by high sugar and starch, and not enough of the right foods. So in the long answer to your question, it's important to give yourself a break of 12 hours. So if you eat at 6 at night, you could eat 6 in the morning minimum, but best probably 14. So if you eat dinner at 6, you eat breakfast at 8, that's okay. That's a 14-hour fast. And in that time, your body is doing its cleanup, recycling, repair.
Is there an evolutionary story here?
For sure, absolutely. When we didn't have grocery stores, we didn't have Whole Foods, we didn't have restaurants, we didn't have takeout, we didn't have convenience stores. So we had to go out and find food. I just came back from Tanzania and visited the hunter-gatherers there, the Kadza, which is one of the last few tribes that hunt and gather. And we went hunting and gathering. And it was like, man, it's a lot of work to go, dig up some roots and kill a bird in the tree. And it was a project. We ran around for hours. And so we don't know where we're getting our next meal. And so the body has had to deal with periods of feast and famine before. And so what it's got built into it is a system of conservation and repair when we don't eat. And so the system gets activated that improves our blood sugar control, that recruits new mitochondria and builds new mitochondria, that reduces inflammation, that activates cellular cleanup and repair processes. So you have all these old cells and damaged proteins. Your body has a little like digester, almost like a little vacuum cleaner that goes and sucks this all up and then digests it and then uses the parts. It's almost like a recycling system in the body. We need to activate that. And so that fasting period is a time to do that. And we've seen even, for example, concentration camp survivors who live really long, like they live 90, 100 plus years old, many of them, and it's because they had this period of deep starvation that had an effect on their biology. And we know this from many animal studies, that starvation and fasting will extend your life by a third. If you eat a third less calories, you'll live a third longer. Now, it's not fun, right? But you don't have to do that. So timing of eating is important. So give yourself 3 hours before bed for no food, and give yourself at least 12 to 14 hours between dinner and breakfast.
How do we know in the animal studies it wasn't just the calorie restriction that caused the sort of longevity effect?
It was.
Oh, it was the calorie.
It was.
So what if I just restrict my calories instead of fasting?
Well, you can do that. I met a guy who was from the Calorie Restriction Society.
There's a Calorie Restriction Society?
Yeah, which is based on this research in animals where, think about it, if you eat a third less, you live a third longer. So for a human, that would be 120 years old. And I said, what do you have for breakfast? He said, well, I had 5 pounds of celery. And I'm like, okay, you go do that. I'm going to figure out another way. So you have to eat enormous amounts of like low-calorie food just to feel full, right? Like, that's why he had all that food. So he was starving. And there are a lot of downsides to starving. You lose muscle, which is necessary. There's certain things that go wrong. And so it's not really the optimal strategy. You want to do things that mimic starvation. So how do you mimic this period of starvation that causes something called autophagy, which basically means to eat yourself, to basically clean up your cells. It's like self-cleaning or self-repair, right? And so there's a lot of ways to hack that. You can do it by this longer-term overnight fast. You can do it by certain supplements and certain medications, like rapamycin is being studied for longevity, which is a drug that's used for cancer and for other immune-suppressing treatments, but it works on this pathway called mTOR, which essentially is the activation of cellular buildup, right? It causes muscle synthesis. So if you want to build muscle, you want to activate mTOR with protein, which is good, but you don't want to activate it all the time. So this drug inhibits mTOR, which is what happens when you starve yourself. So it mimics starvation. And then you get this kind of benefit. Or drugs like metformin are being studied, which is another drug that's looking at how do we activate this longevity switch called AMPK, another pathway that's regulating your nutrient sensing. So when you don't have enough nutrients, this activates. But if we're running around eating, well, you can actually take this drug and it may have an effect. And there's a large trial going on now. I'm still agnostic about it. I'm neither pro or against it. I think the data's not in it for me to start taking it or for my patients to start taking it. But it works on some of these sort of starvation mimicking hacks, let's call them.
So starvation is good for us.
Yeah, I mean, yes.
Moderation.
I would say you have to be careful because, people go really to the extreme. They go like, I'm going to not activate mTOR because activating mTOR causes me to age faster and it prevents autophagy and it builds cancer and it's bad. So I'm going to become a vegan and I'm going to eat less calories. And eventually what happens is you lose muscle. So it's like Goldilocks. You need both mTOR activation and mTOR inhibition. You need to take a breath in, you need to take a breath out. You need to be awake, you need to go to sleep.
Yeah,
that's how your heart needs to beat, it needs to relax. It's just how the body works.
It's a difficult conversation as well because it can provoke disordered eating.
Yeah.
Various eating disorders, which are obviously extremely bad in terms of health outcomes.
Yeah.